Oh boy, we are officially in the Yua route, and honestly, I'm already liking it more than the Nanami one, even if it's kind of fucked up. But fucked up in a good way. Anyway, welcome back to Chaos Head. Of the countless fast food restaurants located throughout Shibuya, every single one was always packed to front to back with young people. It took a lot of courage for a lone middle-aged man to come to a place like this. After all, he would be sure to stick out like a sore thumb. Those were the thoughts circulating in Ban Yasuji's mind as he sipped his coffee, surrounded on all sides by young people chattering away. The drink in his paper cup was already starting to get cold. A single clear file folder sat on the table in front of him. Inside it was a handful of photocopied documents from the investigation files, many of which were adorned with Bond's countless sticky notes. Bond had arrived at the restaurant about an hour ago, the location where he planned to personally re-examine the file's contents, and I'm betting Sue was going to show up and probably kill him. As for why he had chosen such a busy place like this, he had been removed from the New Gen investigation team a few days prior, but he still wished to independently run background checks on all relevant persons. The copy of the report that Bond was sifting through, which was never intended to leave the police station, had a few images attached to it. One photograph depicted one of the victims of the first New Gen incident, the group dive. A girl named Kusanagi Mia. Bond's interest has been piqued the previous day when he had met with Mia's older sister, Kusanagi Yua. After hearing Yua describe Mia's personality, he decided to investigate further. At first, he was looking into rumors from around Shibuya, such as the high school girl with a sword, but in the end, every lead turned up cold. That is, except for Mia. And after reading through the documents again and again, he still felt like something was off. Wait a minute. Hold on. There was a lot of information which seemed trivial at best, or at the very least, not directly related to the case. But after putting the pieces together, something felt out of place. And when Bond heard Yua's story yesterday, the feeling had crept up on him all the more. Okay, so is he like... Okay, so something's wrong. Something about Mia. Okay. I'm wondering if there's like some level of implication that's going on here, because from what we saw in, I think it was the first route where we saw Yua versus Delusion Mia, there was this whole stink about who is Mia and who is Yua. That kind of planted this thought in my head that since they were identical twins and they looked pretty much exactly alike, what if Yua is Mia and Mia is Yua? That's because ever since that scene that played out, there's always been that confusion, like, I believe that Yua is Yua. But ever since that scene played out, there's now this inclination. And now that Bond is starting to investigate that inclination's starting to become more like, oh shit, I might be right. Maybe Yua is Mia, and Mia is Yua. In which case, that makes me wonder, why? After all, there was something in the file that Bond could not ignore. A pair of glasses was found among the possessions of Kusanagi Mia, one of the group dive participants. That was the detail that rubbed Bond the wrong way. He took a look at a list of notes taken from various interviews conducted during the investigation. Taking another sip of coffee, Bond let out a befuddled grunt. From her birth all the way until her death, there was not a single photograph of Kusanagi Mia wearing glasses. Okay, so never mind. Fucking I just called the plot twist before it even happened. Fucking right. They were swapped. The person that I'm actually interested in is Kusanagi Mia, not Yua. Okay, but why were they swapped? Was it like... Oh shit, there's a character I can draw a comparison to, but that would literally spoil one of the big twists of a game I cannot literally say the name of out loud because that would spoil the entire twist of it. Holy sh... I wonder if it's something similar to that, like... Maybe... My thought process... Oh... that story that Yua shared about Mia always being the second best, while Yua was the favored child. Oh, maybe Mia took the personality of Yua so that way she would no longer, so that way she would be the favored child for once. Oh. It was her sister, Kusunoki Yua, that wore them. He had even gone so far as to obtain access to Kusunoki Mia's medical records. Sure enough, she had boasted perfect 20/20 vision and thus had no need for glasses. Kusunoki Mia had been a quiet girl with an interest in anime, quite the contrast to her happy-lucky-go sister. That all matched up with the description Kusunoki Yua had given. While the 5 victims of the group dive were friends, some reports suggested that their encounter on the rooftop was the first time they had ever met. Allegedly, they were online friends who had gotten together for an offline meet. Oh, I've done that a couple of times. Naturally, their only online activity was heavily scrutinized as part of the investigation, but there were never any signs of suicidal tendencies displayed by the victims. Furthermore, several hours before the group dive, 2 high school girls, who appeared to be twins, had been spotted walking into a fast food restaurant in Shibuya. Also, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Is that's not Senna right there, is it? That kind of looks like her. I don't know. I know it's not, but for some reason my brain's like, is that fucking Senna? Bond took a look around. He was sitting in the very same fast food restaurant mentioned in the report. Before sitting down, Bond had also taken the time to speak with one of the restaurant's employees. The employee had told him that the 2 girls had chatted for a while, then proceeded to take a 10-minute bathroom break. What on earth could have taken them so long in there? Bond wondered. Swapping places. He stared intently at the women's restroom, which caught him the scornful glare of every young girl nearby. Realizing this, Bond flashed a wry smile before returning his gaze back toward the streets outside the window. That must have been the moment they swapped places. Alright, we're back here. 18 excruciating hours had passed since Yua had raided my container. 18 hours?! My hands had been tied behind my back and around the leg of my loft bed. Fortunately, I'd been tied sitting down so it wasn't too exhausting. Unfortunately, the rope coiled around my wrists was constantly digging into them, which was fairly painful. I somehow managed to doze off for around 3 hours during that time, but it didn't do me any good. I was still very sleepy, likely due to the fact that no one could get any half-decent sleep like this. Damn it! I wasn't into this S&M shit at all! If only I could hit decline on this roleplay invite. S&M. Submission and... I have no fucking idea. And there's Yua with that cool pose. Also, her hand is now miraculously cured, or healed. Or, I mean, maybe you're Mia. Yua was still sitting on the sofa, watching me. She'd been doing so all night. She really had been putting her all into it, too. She did nothing else the entire time. Did she ever sleep? What was she even trying to accomplish here to begin with? Yua was convinced that I had DID, but I knew that wasn't true. She could wait like that all she wants, but Shogun would never come out. She hadn't gagged me, and actually allowed me to speak right after she tied me down. Of course, I'd taken full advantage of that to voice the above thoughts over and over again, but they just went in one ear and out the other. Okay, so all we gotta do is wait for a phone call with the mysterious voice of Takumi's sister begging for help and all of that, and then there we go. After a few hours of trying to change her mind, I realized how obstinate she really was, so I just gave up. And after that...
あなたが将軍を生み出したんです。あなたが将軍なんです。現実逃避の手段。将軍はあなた自身であり、同時にあなたではない別の存在。もう一人のあなた。あなたの負の側面。 あなたの弱い心を守るための存在。あなたの狂気。快楽殺人者。手段は選ばない。殺す相手も選ばない。殺すことが存在理由。
Man, it really makes me hate Sua.
誰でもよかったんですか？本当にミーヤはなぜ選ばれたんですか？答えて。答えてよ。答えてください。答えてほしい。答えないと許しません。
Man, this is a Wendy's. Yua kept mumbling her pathological ramblings over and over and over again, never coming up for air. My room was extremely small, and my only means of covering my ears, my hands were tied up, so I had no choice but to listen. I thought I was going insane. On top of that, I felt as if I'd only gotten to experience the tip of the iceberg. I started trying to think of a way to escape. I stumbled my words. I started trying to think of a way to escape. I tried pulling the toilet card to weigh my chance of getting out of here, but it didn't work. She did untie my hands and allow me to go, but she followed me very closely. She stood right behind me the entire time, never taking her eyes off of me, even when I was doing my business. And to make matters worse, she even started spouting those insane ramblings of hers from behind my back. How long was this shit gonna go on for? I couldn't even get some actual sleep because who knows when this bitch was gonna snap and kill me out of nowhere. Then again, even if I was awake, I wasn't confident I'd be able to defend myself anyway.
何がきっかけ？どうすれば出てくるんですか？肉体的苦痛？
Please don't.
精神的苦痛？
I've already suffered enough of that.
性的衝動？
No.
トラウマ？
Literally not a single one of my Chaos Head videos are allowed for monetization because of this shit.
偶然？
Yua's murmur suddenly came to a stop. But even then, she was still glaring at me. The room had become dead silent, and yet given the circumstances, the stillness only served to make me even more tense. Suddenly, the sound of a stomach growling broke the silence. I hadn't had anything to eat or drink, so I was obviously hungry, but that still hadn't been me just now. Which meant that Yua was hungry too. Moreover, I was sure I'd heard a stomach growling, but Yua's lack of reaction almost made me reconsider. Normal girls, Seiretan for example, would have had a way cuter reaction. Yeah, she'd most likely say something like this.
何さ、しょうがないっしょ。食べたいけど、すごく我慢してるんだから。なんでって、それは前にあなたに太ってるって言われたから。
Of course, the only way you can do this is by escaping to delusions.
でも別にさ、あなたに言われたからダイエットしてるわけじゃないよ。勘違いしないでよね、このボケナス。
Although, to be fair, in this sort of situation, I have no idea how the hell I would react. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't react like this. Ah, what a classic tsundere. As transparent as a glass window. Sarah, you're so cute when you get mad and blush like that. Sarah. Damn it, the situation I was in was really making me want to escape into my delusions.
食べないんですか？
And now your eyes have changed to semi-normal. Yua's tone was as ice cold as ever. As I was still sitting, she lowered her gaze to my feet. A plate had been placed in front of them. It was a plate full of pasta, Tarako spaghetti, to be precise, served with a finely cut seaweed garnish. However, it had already been sitting there for around 2 hours, so the pasta probably was all dry and sticky by now. Yua had made it for me. She tied me up and left without saying a word, then came back about 30 minutes later with a heaping plate of pasta. It would seem she'd gone to the supermarket, bought the ingredients, then cooked them into a pasta for me outside of the container house. What was she plotting by making me a home-cooked meal? I couldn't wrap my head around it. She could have just bought something that was ready-made at the convenience store. Fair point. Maybe she'd poisoned it. The thought made me want to stay as far away from it as possible. Besides, it wasn't like I could eat it even if I wanted to. My hands were tied up and the plate was at my feet. Yeah, like how do you expect him to eat if his hands are tied up?
あんたが食べればいい。
Remembering that Yua's stomach had growled, I gave that sarcastic retort.
あなたを肉体的にいたぶろうとか、そんなつもりはないんです。
I don't plan on torturing you physically. Mentally, yes, but not physically.
私はただ、将軍が出てくるのを待っているだけ。だから、食べてください。食べてくれなきゃ困ります。食べて。
この状態で食べられると思ってるの？無茶言わないでよ。
Yua stood up, walked up to me, and then she crouched down next to me. Oh, you're gonna force feed me, aren't you? I looked away in fear, still holding on to the hope that she'd untie the rope coiled around my hands. But of course, that wasn't what happened. Instead, Yua picked up the plate, struggled to twirl the dry as hell sticky pasta with a fork, and then once she finally managed to, she held it out to my mouth.
どうぞ。
嫌だ。食べないぞ。
Okay, open wide Sek-ai and its variants were events you could only experience in a roge. This was real life. When things were this tense, all her feeding me did was highlight her murderous intent all the more. At least untie me if you're gonna do shit like this. At least if I was untied, I could pretend to eat some and go, yep, this tastes like shit, take it away, okay, thanks. But here, I wasn't even afforded that.
レンジでチンしましょうか。
いらないって言ってるじゃないか。
I thought about knocking the plate out of her hand with my knee, but if I did that, she'd definitely get pissed, and there was no telling what she'd do next. The thought sent chills down my spine, so in the end, I decided to hold back the urge.
分かってください。私が西条くんにこんなことするのは、あなたを救うためでもあるんです。
You are 1,000,000% convinced, and your opinion will probably never change about this.
決してあなたを傷つけるためじゃないんですよ。
The fuck are you talking about, Yua? Are you stupid? Wanna die? Who the hell did you think she was? She wanted to save me? Sure, it was true that New Gen, Shogun, and all that stuff scared the living shit out of me and that I desperately wanted someone to save me. But that someone was clearly excluding Yua. I never asked to be subjected to this crazy bitch's delusions.
食べて。
Oh shit.
無理にでも食べて。
There was cold pasta twirled around the fork. Yua shoved it toward my mouth.
食べられますよね。
Yua moved even closer, still glaring at me to no end.
食べてください。
Jesus.
食べて。
Oh, damn the voice there. Suddenly, Yua stopped dead in her tracks. Why'd this bitch come closer and closer every time she got mad? I kept looking away and clamped my mouth shut. She must have been insane if she thought I'd ever eat something she'd made up. I'd end up with fucking food poisoning. An hour or so had passed. So we're on hour 19 at this point. Or, well, 30 minutes had passed. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. 18 hours right now. She left the store for 30 minutes. Or she left to go to the store. In about 30 minutes, came up with another meal. So that's 18 and a half hours. 2 hours passed. And the food was still sitting there. So that's 21 and a half hours. We are now 22 and a half hours that have passed so far. Good God. My stomach was still growling. I was so scared that I wanted to scream, but I couldn't.
食べて。食べて。
Also, this music.
食べてって言ってるでしょ。食べて。
Yua was still crouching down next to me, staring at me. And she was still trying to shove the pasta down my throat, too. She had stayed there the entire time in the exact same position.
食べて。食べてください。食べないと。
This is legitimately this is horrifying. I love it!
食べて。食べてほしい。食べて。 食べなさい。食べて。食べていいの。食べなよ。食べろ。
She just kept on making her demands in a series of low murmurs, refusing to do anything else. I had a feeling that another hour had passed already. I was so creeped out I couldn't even lift a finger. I was petrified. I was a deer perpetually stuck in the headlights. She hadn't hurt me or anything, and she hadn't forced me to eat the pasta either. And yet somehow I felt more and more afraid of Yua with each passing moment. She was simply waiting for me to eat and nothing else. And yet I was still scared shitless. A normal person would have given up after about 5 minutes, but not Yua. No, Yua had kept at it for over an hour. If this were a normal version of this kind of thing, you would pull my hair, force my mouth open, and scream at me to, "Eat it, you scum!" But she didn't. So I didn't have the slightest clue what the hell she was thinking. She was a total freak. She was broken. No sane person could do what she was doing. She wasn't human. She couldn't be! I'm scared, 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 I'm scared. I was at rock bottom. I wanted to kneel down and beg for her forgiveness. My entire body was covered in a thick, disgusting sweat. I was enduring so much anguish mentally that I could hardly breathe. I didn't know what to do. I'd never had a girl stare at me from this close and for this long before, but who the hell has? If we were a couple having some lovey-dovey conversation while we rubbed our noses together or some shit, that'd be fine, but no! No. You just kept on repeating the same shit over and over again like a broken goddamn record, but this broken record never stopped fucking glaring at me. How is this even real?
食べて。食べなさい。食べてよ。食べてください。食べろ。
You're gonna pass out by this point. I couldn't deal with her gaze on me any longer, so I dared to squeeze out a single word. My voice had gone hoarse.
食べるよ。
Yua's murmurs stopped. She remained completely still, in the same posture as before. I forced my mouth open. I nervously ate the pasta that she'd been trying to feed me for over an hour. My mouth was already dry to begin with, and eating this withered pasta definitely didn't help. It just sucked away any remaining moisture I had left. I couldn't bear the taste, so I almost didn't chew at all, so as I choked the pasta down. Yua blinked a few times, surprised to see me actually eating. And like a statue come to life, she started moving again.
おいしい。
No! No, it doesn't taste good at all, I thought to myself, but there was no way I could say it to her face, so I just gave her a weak nod instead.
よかったです。
Despite what she said, Yua still had the most deadpan expression on her face. I couldn't detect even the slightest bit of happiness. She moved the fork back toward the plate she was holding, and with it, she picked up another clump of the dry, sticky pasta and held it out to my mouth once again. Did I really have to eat all of it? Would she not let me go otherwise? Give me a break already. Tears started flowing from my eyes. I couldn't hold them in anymore. I was just too scared. And yet, no matter how hard I cried, Yua didn't seem to care. She would keep on doing this until I finished the entire plate. So I ate, tears endlessly streaming down my face, and she kept on feeding me that dry, shitty pasta. By the time I'd finished almost all of it, I was both physically and mentally exhausted.
お腹いっぱいになりましたか？
Please don't punch me in the stomach.
なりましたよね。なったはず。一生懸命作った甲斐がありました。
In contrast to what she said, Yua's tone was ice cold, or cold as ice. Then at last, she took a small step away from me, placed the plate on my desk, and sat back down on the sofa. After sitting down, she looked in my direction and went right back to staring at me. And as she stared, she stopped moving. Don't look at me, damn it. Please stop looking at me. I did nothing but chant those words over and over inside my head, but I couldn't say them out loud. I was too scared. Was she really going to monitor me for an entire day? This was straight up psychological torture. Just the mere thought of it made me even more depressed.
なんでこんなことするんだよ。
I was crying now, but I couldn't help but ask that. I needed to know.
僕に何の恨みがあって。
妹が死んだんです。
Huh? Younger sister? For a split second, Yua looked like she was about to cry, only to quickly reassume her ice-cold expression.
集団ダイブの被害者の一人、私の双子の妹、ミアって言います。私は妹を殺した犯人を許さないって思ってました。そしてあなたにたどり着いた。あなたの苦しみを知りました。私は妹がなぜ殺されなくちゃいけなかったのか、その真実を知りたい。なぜ犯人が、将軍が妹を殺したのか知りたい。それとあなたも助けたい。分かってください。分かってくれますよね。
20 some hours a bit too late to say that now, Yua.
分かるはず。分かるはずです。
I thought back to the video of the group dive that had been uploaded to YouTube. Had one of the crying victims in that video been Yua's younger sister? I knew full well what Yua was going through. The same kind of thing had happened recently with Nanami, after all. But that didn't mean I could forgive what she was doing right now. This crazy bitch had broken into my house, tied me up, and now she was holding me captive. Yeah, no way in hell could I ever feel sympathy to her for after all that shit. That's fair. That's fair. I had completely lost track of time. My room had no windows after all. I had no way to tell what time it was.
その目誰の目ってどういう意味？どうしてこれから殺す相手に言わせたの？どうしてダイイングメッセージとして残したの？あなたは何を訴えたいの？
Usually I just check the time on my PC or my phone on my PC. Not that there were any other ways to do so, but since I was still tied to the leg of my bed, I obviously couldn't use either method. The only chance I got to check the time was whenever I went to the bathroom, but even then it was a pretty small window. But the longer this torture lasted, the harder it got for me to get up and use the bat toilet. I simply didn't feel the urge to piss, likely because I wasn't drinking enough water. It felt as if I'd been deprived of all physiological phenomena for over a day now.
どうしてダーススパイダーなの？
Yeah, we've already exceeded past the 20-hour mark. Or 24-hour mark at this point.
それを被ることで何を訴えたかったの？宗教的な意味があるの？ダークヒーロー願望？それともセランをバカにしたいだけ？
Yua practically didn't move an inch. She simply continued sitting on the sofa, standing up every once in a while to only sit back down right after. And her muttering hadn't stopped the entire time. How was she still talking after this long? I don't know how long. How the hell have I kept talking after all this? I can't even English. You see what is happening? You see what's happening? The torture is starting to affect me at this point. I literally accidentally skipped a little bit of dialogue that I was supposed to read there. What? All I could do is sit there and be assaulted endlessly with questions. Yua's mumbling was starting to sound like a mantra or something at this point. Oh, it wasn't like I could kill time on my PC, nor could I make calls or send any messages. I couldn't stand being watched for this long. Sure, I had to cope with Shogun reading my mind and the sensation of being observed by the gaze, but while those things did suck, I could still at least stomach them. but I wish I could say the same about Yua's unending watch. Her gaze is so utterly devoid of any emotion or warmth that it genuinely felt as if I wasn't even there, like my very existence itself was constantly being ignored, if not outright denied by her. Regardless, the point is that I know nothing, that I knew nothing about what was going on in the outside world, and I couldn't, as long as I was tied up. I had lost all perception of time. I didn't know how many days had passed since I'd been tied up. I had a feeling that 2 days or so had gone by, but it sure as hell felt more like a month. Being deprived of my freedom of movement was really stressful. Every minute of however many hours had passed, I would think to myself, I need to look at a clock. That was the sole thing on my mind.
それとも
Yua's head suddenly tilted. She took off her glasses and rubbed the eyelids that occulted her bleary eyes. She was only human, I imagined. I'd imagine, so she was finally starting to get tired. She hadn't caught a wink of sleep the entire time, after all. Maybe she should have thought this through before doing it. She was just wasting her time. Nothing would come of any of this. This never would have happened if she just listened to me.
いつ出てきてくれるんですか
Her whispers were practically delirious. Come out. She must have still been talking about Shogun.
どうしたら出てきてくれるんですか出てきてよ
Unfortunately for you, he won't come out no matter how much you plead. Because he's not there to begin with.
待ってるから待って
When silence took over the room once more, Yua's body slowly tilted over. With all her strength gone, she fell to her side on the sofa. Had she fallen asleep? Had her batteries finally run out? I breathed a sigh of relief, and all the tension in my body released along with it. I hadn't had even a single moment to relax the entire time she'd been staring at me. And now that she wasn't, I could finally take it easy for a bit.
タッキー、何のんきなこと言ってんの
Seraton's voice rang out from beside my monitor.
逃げるなら今がチャンスなんよ。それどころかさ、今なら無防備なユアッチを逆監禁できるかも。そしたらやりたい放題じゃん、ボケナス。
No. Oh, I see. So I can degrade her and train her and become a perfect sex slave. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm not. Yua was still lying on the sofa, so I took a nervous glance at her face. To be honest, if I ignored everything else, her sleeping face was actually pretty cute. It reminded me of when we first met. That gentle smile she'd had. I obviously didn't know what Yua was really thinking back then, nor that she'd seen me as a murderer. If anything, I saw her as an enemy, as one of Shogun's underlings. But it was her fault for making me think that. She was the one who deceived me, who betrayed me. So if I wanted to degrade her and turn her into my sex slave, the bitch had no right to complain. Fucking stop that! I peeked at Yua's sleeping face once more. Her eyelids twitched erratically and her face contorted in a pained expression. Then from the corner of her eye, a single tear ran down her cheek. Could she be having a nightmare about her dead sister?
タッキー、調教師ないの
After seeing her shed a tear like that, I'd already lost the drive.
監禁されて緊縛されてるのにタッキーって聖人君子だね。優しい、優しすぎる。そこはタッキーのいいところだけど、時と場合によるよ。
Gross. That's not what I meant. Of course I wasn't gonna forgive Yua that easily. I just didn't have the strength to be angry with her, nor to even resist at all. It was all gone. Completely sapped. Was it because of the huge release in tension? Or could it have been because she'd told me about her little sister? It didn't really feel like Yua wanted to hurt me or anything, weird as that might sound. Suddenly I was struck with an intense drowsiness. And so I surrendered my body to the feeling, allowing myself to forget, if only for a moment, the pain my bound wrists were being tortured by. I'll think of a way out of this later. As soon as I woke up, I knew something was off, like something was missing. Still half asleep, I looked around my room. I tried to stand up, but the rope coiled around my wrists dug in deep, and the sheer pain stopped me in my tracks. The pain immediately reminded me that I was tied up, and the one that had done so was Yua. Oh, Yua wasn't here. So that's what had felt off. I was the only one in the room. Where'd she gone? Had she gone to make food? Or to use the bathroom? I didn't know how many days it had been since Yua locked me in here, but what I did know was that neither of us had been to school the entire time. We only went outside to use the bathroom or cook something. I wasn't even allowed to take a shower. I let out a heavy sigh. Yua should come back any minute now, and when she did, she started watching me all over again. Had Yua always been this stubborn, or was it the hatred and regret she felt from her sister's death that made her start acting this way? Regardless, how could I make her understand that I wasn't Shogun? Maybe I could show her the messages Shogun had sent me, if they were still on my PC anyway. Why didn't you do that the first... Motherfucker. But let's be honest, we were long past that. Yua was fully devoted to the delusional bullshit she'd come up with. I doubt she'd believe me, even if I did show them to her. I needed something more concrete. Something to convince her that Shogun and I were two completely different people. If only he would just show up here, then there'd be no denying it. That'd kind of suck for me if that happened, though. I didn't want him anywhere near me, and besides, if he came to my base, it'd probably be to kill me.
ねえねえタッキー、逃げた方がいいよ。
Okay, but how?
私、あんな思い込み激しいストーカー女にこれ以上タッキーがいじめられるのを見たくないもん。
Thank you, Sarah. But I can't run. I can't untie myself on my own. I'd obviously already made my fair share of the attempts to escape, but my struggle had proved futile. Yua's knots were tight, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't even get them to budge.
私が3次元になれたら、今すぐタッキーを助けに行くのにな。
I don't know. As great as escaping sounds on paper, Sarah, I think just doing whatever she says like I've been doing is the far safer option. If I tried to escape and failed, it can make Yua go berserk. Whenever Yua lost her temper, it was crazy how scary she got. So I was going to do everything I could not to provoke her.
自分の命を守るために一番いい方法をちゃんと考えてるんだね。すごいよタッキー。だけど私さ、これ以上タッキーとあの女が同じ部屋にいるのは嫌だな。
As much as I hated to admit it, as long as I was tied up, I was entirely dependent on Yua to survive. Ah, Stockholm Syndrome, here we go. Luckily, she hadn't been violent with me at all yet. She'd even cooked for me and let me use the bathroom whenever I asked. She was still treating me like a human being. And I was sure that once she finally understood that no matter how long she waited, Shogun wouldn't come out, she'd let me go. Hell, even better, I was sure she'd beg me for forgiveness. Of course, I'd make her get down on her knees and hands and knees, or else what'd be the point? And while we're at it, I could accidentally grab her tits too. And then it'd all be forgiven. Yua would go back to her own life and I'd go on with mine. She'd never see me again, and I'd never see her again. So at the very least, the Yua threat would disappear completely. Or if I was very lucky, there was even a chance that she would have a change of heart and end up joining my party. Shogun was still real and very much a problem, so Yua could step up and replace Rimi as my protector. It'd be better than nothing. Oh my god, I was joking about the Stockholm, good lord. We even had some common ground above all else. Yua resented the new gen culprit and therefore Shogun. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yua's interests and mine coincided.
僕って頭良くね、天才じゃね。
タッキーってば天才。私さ、ますますタッキーのこと好きになっちゃった。
And so I decided to ride this storm out. Ugh. Okay, where the hell was she? Yua still hadn't shown any signs of coming back. It's been a good while since she'd left, too. I knew for a fact that at least a few hours had passed. Probably. Where in the world is she gone? Sure as hell wasn't the toilet. I could also rule out that she'd been grabbing dinner, since there was no way it would have been taking this long. Every time she'd gone out to buy us food, she just went to the nearest supermarket and came back shortly after. So where was she? Has she gone to school? I didn't even know what time it was right now, but if it was around noon, then it's certainly a possibility. If I could have just looked at the minimum attendance chart, then I would have been able to know what day it was instantly. It would have told me a lot, really. For example, if Yua had kept me locked up for 3 days straight and the first day had been Friday, that would explain why she'd been able to stay here and not go to school. Because it had been the weekend. In other words, today was Monday. How does that keep happening? Oh, it's probably because I'm now using a controller rather than clicking on the mouse. That's okay. In other words, today was Monday and Yua had gone to school because it had been the weekend. That had to be it. What day it had been when Yua had broken into my room again? My consciousness was already foggy as all hell, so I couldn't remember clearly. But what if she hadn't gone to school? What if she'd gone back home, for example? These days, every slut in high school would stay out overnight without asking their parents, but Yua wasn't like that. Could you not refer to your classmates as sluts, please? Even if she had gotten permission, staying over at my place for who knows how many nights would have definitely made her parents worry. So knowing that, she'd gone back home in order to pacify them. Probably. That made a lot of sense, actually. Well, regardless of where she'd gone off to, she had to come back eventually. So it'd be in my best interest to stay put and conserve my energy. Letting out a small sigh, I closed my eyes. Might as well get some sleep. Knock, knock. Ah! I couldn't sleep. I'd closed my eyes and tried my hardest to doze off for hours on end, but I just couldn't manage to. I ended up just staring at the door, torturing myself over whether or not Yua would come back. There was a bit of a windstorm going on outside, so the door rattled faintly every once in a while. Whenever it did, I would immediately open my eyes, thinking that Yua had come back. But no matter how many times I thought that, she still hadn't. I was left all alone in this container, tied up like an animal. Since she was taking her sweet time, I decided I might as well try to break out of the restraints on my wrists. The rope that bound me to the leg of my bed was made of nylon, which was why I thought that maybe with enough force I could break free. And so I poured all my strength into my arms. But it was no use. The rope didn't even budge. Or maybe I was just too weak. After all, I was a pretty big weakling in general, an otaku freak that did nothing but play vidya and surf the web all day long. There was no way I could have broken that cord like some kind of movie protagonist. Tearing the cord with just arm strength alone was obviously impossible, so I tried to think of some other way. Obviously, it would have been really easy if I had a knife or something, but unfortunately, I had no such luck. The only things I could see around me were magazines, manga CDs, empty boxed lunches, that kind of stuff.
ダメだ。
I was hopeless. I couldn't even snap a single piece of nylon string on my own.
ユアは戻ってくるよね。
Oh shit, is he gonna be left here to die? I unintentionally voiced those thoughts out loud, meaning I was basically talking to myself.
ねえねえタッキー、もしかしてさ、見捨てられたんじゃない？
Abandoned me? As in, Yua had left me here to rot? As in, she wasn't planning on coming back? If that was all true, I was screwed. Surely she hadn't just tied me up and expected me to survive on my own, right? If you're gonna lock someone up, then you should realize you're responsible for them until you let them go. Come on, that was just common sense. No, she couldn't have abandoned me. I was overthinking it. Yua was definitely going to come back. She still hadn't uncovered Shogun's true identity, so surely she wouldn't give up yet. Yua would never abandon me. This is fine.
知ってる？そういうのってさ、ストックホルム症候群って言うんよ。
Oh, Jesus Christ, even freaking Sarah's like, hey, you know this is called Stockholm Syndrome, right? Yes, I obviously knew what Stockholm Syndrome is. But you're wrong. This isn't like that. My brain isn't dependent on Yua or anything. As if I would ever warm up to that mental case, let alone fall for her.
僕もつい最近ナナミのことがあったからユアの気持ちはわからなくはないとかって脳内で妄想してなかったっけ
I am your delusion after all. Was I lying to myself? Was I just forcing myself to believe that I could trust Yua? Maybe I was. Stockholm Syndrome was a psychological phenomenon in which people deceive their own selves for the sake of survival. And for the people in back who just wanted a better definition. A psychiatric term. In cases such as imprisonment, the hostage is forced to spend an extensive amount of time with their captor in an enclosed space. As a result of this extended interaction, the hostage may begin to develop positive feelings toward their captor, despite them doing horrible things to them. This phenomenon is known as Stockholm Syndrome. It can be described as a state of self-deception based on the idea that building a trusting relationship with one's captor rather than resisting them will increase chances of survival. The name is derived from a real hostage situation that took place in Stockholm in 1973. For people that are actually, I do recommend looking into that case, by the way. It's interesting. Probably interesting is not the best word to describe that, but you know. But what else could I do in this situation? I had no other choice. I had to rely on Yua. Rimi had backed out, and Nanami hadn't come and check on me for a long time now. My parents let me know when they were worried about me via Nanami, but they never actually checked on me personally. And the only other person that knew I lived in this container was Yua. Which meant the only person I could rely on was also Yua. Therefore, I had to lie to myself. It was the only way I could survive. I didn't want to die. I didn't want Yua to mistreat me, and I didn't have the courage to resist her using force. So that was why I decided to just submit. I wouldn't resist, and then if I waited long enough, eventually she'd understand. That was the only way an otaku freak like me would be able to survive. I would trust in Yua. I would trust in her by lying to myself, and then I'd make it out of this without anyone getting hurt.
あんなストーカーメガネ女を信じちゃダメだよタッキーゆとりすぎ
For the first time in my life, I completely ignored what Serotan had to say. So please come back soon, Yua. You're coming back, right? Oh, shit. And then it happened. Wait a minute, no, this is probably a delusion. Without warning, the door burst open. It caught me completely by surprise and I immediately froze. I bet you this is a delusional, Yua. I could finally see outside. The sky was dyed orange by the setting sun, and there, obstructing my view of it, was Yua. I was relieved from the bottom of my heart to see her there. Realizing that I hadn't been abandoned nearly made me cry tears of joy. I was a little disgusted with how easily I'd been tamed, but my disgust was immediately overshadowed by the intense feeling of relief.
おかえり。
I had no one else, so I was forced to be dependent on her. That was why something so fucking stupid had somehow come out of my mouth. But...
あなた、邪魔だわ、西条くん。
Nani? Yua quickly walked over to me, crouched down to meet me at eye level, and then she grabbed my hair and yanked on it hard.
邪魔なの。あなたがいなければ
I don't think that's Yua.
将軍は出てくるはずなのに。
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, shit.
なんでいるの？自重してよ。少し引っ込んで。あなたと話しても意味ないの。私はあなたと話したいんじゃない。出して。将軍を出しなさいよ。
Okay, Yua was acting weird. Was she getting impatient? Because Shogun wouldn't come out? Did that mean she was going to resort to more drastic measures? This wasn't what I planned. I believed in her. I trusted that she wouldn't go berserk on me. Was she about to betray me again? Who am I kidding? I'm the only one who feels betrayed. I was forced to face reality. I had decided to place my trust in Yua all on my own. She had never asked me to, not once. Had I just been naive? It was because I was an otaku freak and a shut-in too, wasn't it? I knew pretty much nothing about human interaction because of those things, so tricking me was like taking candy from a baby. If I was right about this, then I've been right about everything. Nothing good could come from 3D. It was time for me to become a real shut-in, but this time I'd lock myself in the 2D world. Yua thrusted something in front of my face. It was a notebook of some kind. Oh shit.
これを読んであなたは知るべきです。妹はミヤちゃん、集団ライブが起きるもっと前からあなたに、いえ、将軍に狙われていたんです。
Even since before.
ストーカーされていたんですよ。だから集団ライブは5人を殺すのが目的だったんじゃない。他の4人は巻き添え。狙いはミヤちゃん1人だった。
Okay, now you're kind of losing this. Now you're probably losing it a little bit. I think all 5 of them were targets, but you're so lost in this kind of delusion that, oh dear.
そうでしょう。そうよね、将軍。答えて。出てきて、答えなさい。
Yua's voice was getting more and more hysterical. My fear of her had come back full force. My heart was beating out of my chest. My entire body trembled. But even so, I still couldn't accept what Yua was accusing me of. It was just a bunch of delusions she'd come up with, nothing but pure falsehoods. I'd never even met Yua's sister. I desperately shook my head from side to side, but she grabbed my hair so tight the pin kept me from moving very much. Yua's face drew ever closer, close enough to whisper in my ear, and then she brought the diary even closer to my face. She forced me to look up. Then, while still holding the diary with one hand, Yua started dexterously turning the pages. And what I saw written there sent a chill down my spine. What is this? What the hell is this?
日記の最後のページ。ミヤが最後に書き残した。その誰の日付は9月6日。集団ライブでミヤが殺された前日です。
将軍だ。あいつに思考盗撮されてたんだ。
思考盗撮って何？違うでしょ。違うわ。ストーカーされていたんです。将軍に、あなたに。
僕は将軍じゃ。
あなたの中にいる将軍にです。
だから言ってるじゃないか。将軍は他にいるんだ。
将軍は西条匠です。
Technically correct?
言い逃れしないで。
I mean, you're technically correct on that.
その目誰の目というあなたが昔書いた作文がその証拠です。他にもいくつもの状況証拠がある。あなたしか考えられない。考えられないのよ。あなたじゃなきゃおかしい。妹はあなたに殺された。
That's not true. That's not true at all. I don't sleepwalk and I don't have multiple personalities either. Shogun does exist, but he isn't me. He's someone else, I swear.
どう思う？この日記を見てどう思う？ミヤを追い詰め殺して満足？こんな日記を書かせるぐらい追い詰めて満足？ どうしてミヤにこんなひどいことをしたの？どうしてミヤを殺したの？どうして？
いや、間違ってる。
Everything you say is wrong.
間違ってるのはあなたよ。あなたは人を殺した。殺したじゃない。人殺し。
だってこの日記はユアの日記じゃないか。
Oh my god, wait a minute. Didn't that say Yua's diary? It didn't fucking click it. Oh my god! Oh my lord, I just went back and looked at the footage. I was so lost in the narrative. I didn't I forgot to read the fucking cover of the book. It said Yua's diary!
何です？
Yua looked puzzled. It had stuck out to me like a sore thumb ever since I'd first seen it. What was written on the front cover? Yua's diary. At first, I thought I was just mistaken or something, but Yua had said exactly whose diary she thought it was.
妹の日記です。
But if it was her sister's diary, shouldn't it have said Mia's diary?
これはユアの日記だ。表紙にそう書いてある。
And the delusion shatters. So I was right. Yua was Mia and Mia is Yua.
何言ってるの？
Yua deliberately avoided looking at the front cover.
これはミヤちゃんのよ。死んだミヤちゃんの日記。あなたに殺されたミヤちゃんの。ミヤちゃんのなのよ。ミヤちゃんが書いた。死ぬ前に書いたの。
だったら表紙を見てよ。
Terrified, I nervously pointed at the notebook. Without showing a hint of hesitation, Yua closed it and took a look at the cover. And when she did, she turned back toward me and said,
やっぱりミヤちゃんの日記だわ。
She's deluded herself. Huh? She must have seen it just now. There was no way she hadn't. Yua's diary was right there, written in bright red marker. So how would she...
これはミヤちゃんが書いた日記。私を騙そうとしたの。騙されるわけないでしょ。私はミヤちゃんとずっと一緒に育ってきたんだから。生まれてからずっと一緒だったんだから。あなたなんかよりずっと私の方がミヤちゃんのことを知ってる。知ってるの。
Because you are her.
ユアには見えないの。はっきり書いてあるじゃないか。それはユアの日記。
Yua's hand suddenly shot up to her temples. Her face was warped in pain.
違う。この日記は私じゃなくてミヤちゃんが。私。西条君に自覚があるはずないから。あなたは DID 多重人格なんです。
Oh.
君は誰だ？
私はユア。私は。
Could it be that I'd never been the one with DID? It had been Yua all along?
楠木ミヤなんて実在するの？
Had the police ever officially announced the identities of the group dive victims? Since she was a minor, they would have just called her Girl A or something, right? Usually Jane Doe. No, that's for unknown bodies. Or
ユアに双子の妹なんて本当にいたの？
while it was certainly possible that someone named Kusunoki Miya had existed and had died in the group dive, it was also possible that they were completely unrelated to Kusunoki Yua, the person standing in front of me right now. They could have simply been someone with an extremely similar name.
いるわ。
Suddenly, Yua wrapped her hands around my neck. Her fingers were oh so slender, and yet they harbored a terrifying amount of strength within them. I couldn't breathe.
いたわよ。ミヤちゃんは確かにいた。はっきり覚えてるもの。
証明できるの？
Yua's grasp weakened.
自分は DID じゃないって証明できるの？楠木宮じゃないって証明できるの？
I, for one, couldn't prove that I wasn't my alter ego. After all, the only way to prove that I wasn't Shogun would have been for him to show up next to me.
できるわ。
Yua took her hands off my neck. She let the notebook fall to the floor.
ミヤちゃんにはほくろがあった。
Yua slowly began to remove her uniform's top.
左胸の下、そこにほくろがあった。私にはないほくろ。
She unbuttoned her blouse one button at a time, her hands trembling impatiently as she did. Don't actually... But she didn't stop there. She went on to remove her bra too. Her fairly voluptuous breasts were covered only by her hands. She fumbled around. That is a mole for a certain spot on her skin. I searched too with my eyes, and just under her left breast was a mole.
ある。
あるよ。
どうして？
Yeah, you got a mole there, girl.
私にはほくろはないはずなのに。
So you are Mia.
私誰？
Yua's face grew pale as a ghost, and her lips trembled in fear. Her eyes swam in place, gazing into the abyss as she wrapped her arms around herself. She didn't even care that she was still half naked.
私はユア。
Oh, you're Mia.
私はずっといい子で。
Oh.
ミヤちゃんはずっと悪い子で。私はずっといい子になりたくて。
I fucking knew it.
ミヤちゃんはユアちゃんが大好きで。ユアちゃんはミヤちゃんが心配で。
Her ramblings gradually turned even more incoherent. I was pretty freaked out, but I knew I couldn't just abandon her and make a run for it. I knew full well exactly what mental state she was in, because I, until only a moment ago, had been in the same exact one. From the moment Yua had told me I had DID, I'd been suffering from nonstop anxiety, instability, so I really did understand. I knew what it was like to feel like your entire existence was one step away from crumbling to dust. I didn't know if she was suffering from DID or if it was something else entirely. But what I did know was that there was something wrong with her, and there always had been. I knew people could be two-faced, but she was far, far too good at it. It was still hard to believe that she'd been acting when we first met. The difference between her back then and her when she snapped was like night and day, so much so that it didn't even feel like the same person.
ユアは DID なんじゃ。
違う。ちゃんといた。ちゃんといたの。ミヤちゃんはちゃんといた。
Still covering her breast with one arm, Yua fished for something in the top she'd just taken off. She then took out her phone, hit a few buttons, then showed it to me.
見て。ここにいるでしょ。私たちがいるでしょ。
あ。
So when her sister actually died, so they were in the bathroom for 10 minutes. That was when they swapped places, and ever since the death of her sister, she's taken on that identity far too well. She did exist. There were definitely two people on the screen there, and the image didn't look edited either. The two looked eerily similar in that picture. Although they were twins, the only difference was that one had glasses and the other didn't. Even their hairstyles was the same.
私はここにいる。
君はどっちなんだ？
私は
She pointed to the one on the left. Right at that moment, the floor started shaking violently. An earthquake? It's even bigger than the last one! I was struck with the violent ringing in my ears. It was such an intensely shrill, resonant sound, my head felt like it was about to burst open. Yua grabbed her head and fell to her knees. I wanted to do the same, but my hands were tied up, so I couldn't. It felt like my ears were being pierced by thousands upon thousands of needles. And then, a flash of white. Another, I think this is supposed to be the third melt. Ah! I was hit by an enormous impact, and a blinding light dyed my vision completely white. Well, I fucking knew that.